my people, how you doing? I hope you're having a damn great day. Welcome back to the channel. Now, we will be talking about the highly requested Rob Edwards Luton Town tactics, of course, the 3-4-2-1 system, as well as the defensive shape that they do look to try and get into every now and then. Of course, you saw it in the second half against Newcastle, and we do see it throughout courses of games, how they look to try and soak up pressure and then look to try and be a bit more of a counter-attacking side. But they do look to try and revert into this 5-2-3 system. So we will talk about that. So stay tuned. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button, please. That would be damn near fantastic. We're building on to the next step of the channel and the next milestone, essentially, which is 5,000. So if you can and you're not subscribed and you do like my content, hit that big red button. I would absolutely appreciate it. And let's hop on straight into the goddamn video. So taking a look at the balanced formation, of course it is a 3-4-2-1. Therefore, the wider midfielders have been pushed a little bit deeper into those wing-back areas, and this does help with the defensive shape and the defensive outlet that you will look to try and have every now and then. So, essentially, the lineup will look like one goalkeeper, 3 centre-backs, 2 wing-backs, 2 central midfielders, 2 centre-forwards, and then, of course, 1 striker. So, moving on to the tactics. Now, I think the best tactical vision that suits this side is kick and rush. Now, you can also use counter-attack, but I think for a more offensive outlet and a more offensive display, I think kick and rush best suits what this side can offer and what they have been displaying of late when they are feeling a bit more confidence. So more so, kick and rush will look to try and bypass the midfield. So especially when the opposition is looking to try and flood that midfield area, you only really have 2 central midfielders, so you will look to try and bypass them every now and then, whether it's the likes of Tom Lockyer getting on the ball, or one of your backline players, or maybe even Nakamba or Lakonga getting on the ball and then spring it forward into the forward line. You can look to do that, but at the same time, Ross Barkley has been an absolute magician in the midfield for Luton this season. He has been very, very good. He's revitalized his career, you could say. I mean, we even have some people saying he should be on the plane for the Euros. I don't know if that's going to happen, but nonetheless, the kick and rush approach does bypass the midfield. So I will also say, get the likes of Ross Barkley on the ball as much as you possibly can. Allow him to drive at the opposition, but the plan B is always there for that long ball in behind, having the likes of an Adebayo, Colton Morris, running behind, try to exploit the space as much as they possibly can. That is more or less what you will be trying to do more times than not. As for the defense, and the defensive style of things, of course, when the likes of Luton are feeling very expressive and very much in confidence, they will look to aggressively press the opposition, look to try and, make sure that they are keeping their backline, the opposition's backline, on their toes, making sure it's very hard to find that extra pass, or more or less trying to build up from the back. They will look to aggressively press, and we saw that against Brighton. The goal that Adebayo scored within like the first 19 seconds of the game, it was a very aggressive press off the bat, making sure that the likes of Brighton, who are a very good ball-playing side, couldn't find a pass, couldn't find that extra man, and therefore they were able to win the ball back and then obviously score a goal. As for the team width, it is set to 70. Now, this is a very widespread team. Of course, you are essentially playing a back 5, so therefore there will be a few holes there, here and there, but at the same time you are playing a back 5 with 2 central midfielders that can look to slot in and plug those extra gaps that are formed every now and then. As for the depth, it is set to a low, or not a low block, but a mid block, set to 40, a low mid block you could say, set to 40. It can probably get a little bit higher every now and then, but you want to try and protect yourself with preventing those exclusive or expressive through balls played by the opposition, trying to exploit you as much as possible. So therefore, trying to minimize the space between the goalkeeper and the backline is essential, and therefore I think 40 does reflect a realistic approach for how they set up their tactics in real life. As for the offense, the builder player is set to long ball. Of course, this goes hand in hand with the kick and rush approach, but again, like I said earlier, you can get your midfield onto the ball. You can get the likes of a Ross Barkley on the ball, driving at the opposition, finding those little pockets of space in and around the opposition's, the way that they set up defensively. So you can still do that, but at the same time, if the opportunity is there to try and hit an Elijah Adebayo in transition, try and go for that as much as possible. As for the transcreation, it is set to direct passing. Now, this will also encourage your forwards to make those runs in behind, as well as your wing backs. Of course, the likes of Alfie Doherty, as well as we have gone for the likes of Kabore, or it could essentially be Ogbene. Either or, the direct passing will definitely encourage those players to be able to make those runs in behind, which is essentially what you are trying to do. Onto the other side of the offense, the width is still set to 70, so the defensive as well as the offensive shape doesn't really shift or shrink too much from one another. It's still going to be set to 70. You are looking to try and, you know, stretch the opposition as much as possible, get the ball out into those wide areas, whether it's the likes of Kabore and Elfie Doherty or the likes of Ogbene in those wide areas, looking to try and provide crosses or cutbacks. They do tend to whip in quite a few crosses to try and supply their three forwards. As for the players in the box, I've set it to 6. Now, that more so your attacking front 3 will be in and around that attacking area, or potentially one of them will look to hang on the edge of the area, and the likes of Ross Barkley will look to attack in that final third shape. As for the corners and the free kicks, as per always, I've set it to 4. Taking a look at the instructions, starting off at the back with the goalkeeper Kaminsky. Now, I've set him to a balanced approach for both saving on crosses and, of course, saving outside of the box. So, he is more or less going to be playing in a low to mid block at times, so you don't really require your goalkeeper to make those runs outside of the box. And more so, Kaminsky is more of a traditional type goalkeeper, where he will look to try and stay on his line and make those saves. As for the saving on crosses, however, I've set him to balance as well, because sometimes he can be quite good at claiming those balls, alleviating the stress and the pressure on the back line. Other times, he can look to try and stay on his line, be a bit more of a traditional goalkeeper, and allow for the centre-backs to try and deal with the situation at hand and clear their lines. So, speaking of which, the centre-backs, there's no major changes to it. They are all set to their base set of instructions, whereas your wing-backs are told to join the attack as well as overlap, allowing for them to be very involved in the attacking outlets as much as possible, providing quite a bit of the width on a horizontal plane for this team going forward. Of course, when they provide the width, it does open up a bit more space in between the lines for the likes of a Barkley, Sambi, Lakonga, and so on to try and operate in a bit more space. Finally, as for the defensive positioning for both your wing-backs, they are told to stick to position. You don't really require them to step out and be a bit more aggressive, because that can tend to break the defensive shape every now and then, and therefore it can create problems for your defensive outlets. So therefore, more or less, stick to position, keep the shape, keep the structure at the back, make sure it's very hard to break down. Bing, bang, boom, and you've got yourself a clean sheet more times than not. As you'll see here, for the likes of Doherty, he's got the same set of instructions as well. So moving on into your midfield, of course, we'll start off with the midfield maestro, Ross Barkley. As he goes, this team goes. He is the offensive outlet more times than not. He is the offensive spark in the side. So, for the attacking support, you want him to be able to get forward, obviously linking up very effectively with the 3 forwards just in front of him. As for the support on crosses, a balanced approach is best. Sometimes he does tend to hang on the edge of the area looking to try and create and facilitate, other times breaking into the box and scoring those goals. We saw against Newcastle, I think it was Elfie Doherty that fired in, it was either a cross or a shot. Either way, the goalkeeper palms it, it falls to Ross Barkley, and he is there to tuck it away for a goal. So you are trying to replicate and recreate situational type situations like that when going forward with the likes of this team. As for the interceptions, I've set it to normal, and then finally, the defensive position is set to cover the center, so you want to try and solidify that central area of the field as much as possible. If the ball does drift out wide for the opposition into those winger areas, you can manually try and drag the likes of a Ross Barkley or a Sambi Lakonga into those wide areas to try and, you know, cover for maybe a wing back that hasn't come back in time. And then finally, for the likes of big man Ross, he is told to have a free roam approach. Do you want him to be able to pop up in little half spaces, stroke for the ball, get on the ball as much as he possibly can, allow him to express himself on the offensive side of things, allow him to try and exploit the opposition with the ability to find those little pockets of space and essentially find the quick killer ball for the forwards. As for the likes of Sambi Lakonga, it can also be Nakamba as well. So he is told to stay back while attacking. You don't really require him to get forward as much. You want to try and, you know, solidify the defense if the ball is turned over and there is a counter-attacking opportunity. You need him to be more or less the first line of defense in the midfield. As for the supports on crosses, you want him to stay on the edge of the box, looking to try and link up with Barkley as much as possible, rotating the ball, facilitating it a bit more, looking to try and, you know, find the best possible offensive outlets. As for the interceptions, I've set it to normal, as well as cover the center for the defense position, as well as stick to position for the offensive outlet. You don't require him to drift wide or have a free roam role. More or less stick to position, and when the ball is past him, he's going to look for a better pass or a better opportunity for one of his teammates. Further forward, we've got the likes of Clark. Now, this can also be Townsend's role. I know Townsend, I think he's injured at the moment, that's why he hasn't more or less featured, but Clark has done a very good job in this role. So, he is obviously a more of a natural midfielder, but he is going to be told to have a balanced width. So every now and then he can drift wide or stay a bit more central. Most importantly though, we do see him drop a bit deeper, link up a bit more with the other midfielders as well as the wing backs every now and then. So in order to replicate this role, he's going to be told to be a false nine as well as come back on defense. And then finally, you want him to have that very aggressive counter-pressing nature, pressing the opposition, winning the ball back very effectively, and then obviously looking to progress it. So therefore, I think the best instructions should be aggressive. So on to the likes of Carlton Morris now. Of course, he is going to be a bit more physical. Him and Adebayo have a very similar role, but the likes of Morris will look to try and drift a bit more central, sometimes putting an opposition man out of position, other times allowing for the likes of Adebayo to drift into that wider space. But most importantly, both of them are going to be target men. Both of them have the ability to break in behind, of course, with the direct passing being set to be on. They will look to sometimes make those runs in behind, but at the same time, they can look to back into the opposition, hold up the play very effectively, link up very well with the players in and around them, which is more so what the likes of Morris and Adebayo are going to be doing. As for the interceptions, I've set it to normal, and then finally, the defensive support is set to basic, therefore allowing him to drop a bit deeper, link up a bit more with the defensive side of things, being another layer to the shield, as well as sometimes allowing him to stay forward and be very effective on the counter with the likes of Elijah Adebayo, which is set to a very similar role but slightly different. He is set to a balanced width, so allowing him to drift every now and then, allowing him to vacate the central areas for the likes of Carlton Morris to sometimes take up or potentially pull players out of position. As for the attacking runs, it is set to a target man. You want him to be very physical, using his massive frame to link up play very effectively higher up the field. For the interceptions, I've set him to aggressive. He does press very, very well, and you want him to more or less press the opposition's backline as well as the goalkeeper. And then finally, the defensive support, he is told to stay forward, being very much the offensive outlet on the counter. So taking a look at the defensive shape. Now, they do look to try and revert into this shape when they are looking to try and counter the opposition, or when the opposition are trying to pile on as much stress and pressure as possible. Therefore, you would require quite a lot of defensive support, so therefore, your wing-backs will drop a bit deeper. Onto the formation, it is still a 3-4-2-1 system, but I've dropped the wing-backs slightly deeper, and therefore, I've tweaked a few tactics as well as instructions. So, moving on to the tactical side of things. Now, the tactical vision is still set to kick and rush, but the first change that we do see here is the defensive style is set to pressure on heavy touch, looking to try and keep their shape as best as they possibly can, making sure that the opposition can't exploit them, but they are ready to pounce if the opposition make a mistake with potentially a heavy touch or a bad pass. So therefore, they will look to more or less implement that press to try and win the ball back, and then obviously look to try and counter with players flooding forward. As for the team width, it is set to a slightly more narrow 40 this time, looking to try and compact centrally, making it very hard for the opposition to play through the central areas of the field. As for the depth, I've set it to 10. Now this will allow for less space to be exploited in behind, as well as making it very hard for the opposition to try and break down the defensive line. So moving on to the offense, it is still set to long ball as well as direct passing, but the first change we see on the offensive end is the width. It's slightly more narrow. Those long balls that will be fired in behind a bit more centrally, allowing for the likes of Adebayo and Carlton Morris to be able to latch onto them a bit more centrally as well, and trying to make those runs in behind. As for the players in the box, I've set it to 4, allowing for only really your front 2 to be able to express themselves and get forward into that attacking third. And then finally, the corners and the free kicks, as for always, are still set to 4. So, having a look at the instructions, starting off at the back with Kaminsky, he's got the balanced role yet again. There's no major changes required for your goalkeeper, especially with the fact that you are playing a much deeper block, as well as you don't really require him to do too much apart from make those saves. As for the back line, we've got Bell, Lockyer and Mengi. They are still set to their same set of instructions as well. But for your wing backs, slightly differing roles for them. So, the attacking runs is set to balance. So again, it goes back to that pragmatic style of football. If the opportunity is there, take it. Allow yourself to be an offensive outlet. Bomb down the flank if the opportunity is there. If it's not, stay back, keep your shape, keep your structure. More so, these instructions are more or less created to make sure that the fullbacks, the wingbacks, are more or less in place more times than not. As for the interceptions, I've set it to conservative, making sure that they aren't chasing the ball or chasing a potential intercept. They are looking to more or less keep their shape, keep their structure, and if the ball is fired straight into them, they'll look to obviously win it back and then play it forward. When they do get forward though, you still want them to be making those overlapping runs, generating a lot of the width down either flank. And then finally, for the defensive positioning, it is set to step up, making sure that they are nice and close and tight to their man when they are out of possession of the ball. As you'll see here, for the likes of your left wing back, he has got the same role as well. Into your midfield, of course, Barkley, a bit more of the attacking of the two midfielders before, but this time the attacking role is somewhat subdued. It's a balanced approach. So yes, again, back to the pragmatic style of football. If the opportunity is there, get forward. If it's not, stay back, keep your shape, keep your structure. The support on crosses is still set to a balanced approach, but this time the interceptions is set to aggressive, making sure it's very hard for the opposition to try and play balls in the central areas of the field, because you have two very proactive and reactive central midfielders that are looking to try and aggressively win that ball back in front of the back line. As for the defense positioning, it's still set to cover the center, and this time for Ross Barkley, you want him to be able to stick to position. You don't require him to have that free roam attacking role. More so, stick to position, make sure that when you are in possession of the ball, you're flooding it forward, you're passing that ball forward into the forwards to try and have them be the offensive outlets. As for the likes of Sambi Lokonga, he's basically got the same role as before, except for the interceptions being set to aggressive. Otherwise, there's no major changes to his role. Another player that has the same role is the likes of Clark. You still would require him to have a balanced width, plays a false line, aggressive interceptions is still there, as well as the ability for him to come back on defense. The likes of Morris as well, he has got the same role and instructions, no major changes to him, but we do see the likes of Elijah Adebayo changing his role. So he's set to balance width, so still looking to try and drift in and out of those central areas of the field, but this time you want him to more so make those runs in behind, trying to exploit the space left in behind from the opposition. Of course, you are looking to try and soak up as much pressure as you possibly can with this formation, so therefore the opposition will be flooding men forward, allowing for a slightly thinner layer of defensive protection for them, as well as a bit more space in behind for your striker to potentially exploit. As for the interceptions, it is set to aggressive, and then finally, the defensive support is set to basic. So not forward or stay forward, you would require him every now and then to drop a bit deeper and link up a bit more at a deeper rate with the players in and around him. So there you have it, people. That is how I would set out Rob Edwards' Luton Town tactics, the 3-4-2-1 system. If you have enjoyed this video, as always, hit that like button down below. The road to 5K is on, so if you can, subscribe. If you're not, that would be fan-damn-tastic. But out of 10, I would give this a solid 7.5. I think they are very, very effective tactics to use. Very good for FC24, especially if you are playing against a very good ball-playing opposition team or player. So yes, I think a solid 7.5 is required. And yeah, until the next time, my dudes, I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm out.